If you want to procure a job or admissions into a university or something similar, then you're going to need professional and academic references. But if you want those references to be good and you want them to last over time, then there are at least 4 obligations that you have as the person asking for that reference. So let's go ahead and go through each one of those. So the first thing, which is to establish a relationship with your potential references, should be kind of obvious, but it's worth mentioning nevertheless, because it's not enough to just be in the same room as somebody for, say, 6 months and then expect that they're going to be willing to write something about you, much less are they really going to have anything at all to write about you. So if it's a professor, then make sure you are going to their office hours and going above and beyond in class and participating. If it's a coworker, similar deal, go out of your way to talk to them, maybe even have lunch with them once in a while and establish a relationship there so that when you ask for a reference, then it makes sense. The second thing is reduce the confrontation, because asking someone for a reference is putting them on the spot, because if they want to say no, then they can't do it so easily because they're going to turn out to be the bad guy and it's difficult to make that decision right in front of you. And even if they end up saying yes, then it's just going to be kind of a begrudging yes because, again, they don't want to be the bad guy, but that's not going to bode well for the quality of your reference. So what I like to do to be non-confrontational is I send an email first, and that way I'm removing myself from that decision and they can make it without me sitting there staring at them. If they want to say no, then that's great, and it's not as dramatic, but if they want to say yes, that's also an option. Either way, it's easy for them to make that decision. Now, I clarify a couple things in that email, and we'll talk more about it in detail in the next step. But the first thing I clarify is, again, relieving the pressure by saying, hey, there are no hard feelings if you decide ultimately that you can't recommend me. It would be great if you could, but if not, then I'll just continue to keep you updated from here. And the second thing I ask is if I can meet with them in person. So now they're expecting it, and again, it's not confrontational, it's not out of the blue. So we can sit down and talk about it at length at a time of your choosing, whenever it's best for you. Now, if someone does agree to be a reference for you, then your obligation becomes to reduce the burden on them, to do as much work as possible for them instead of putting this burden on their plate in addition to everything else that they've got going on and saying, I expect you to do all this work for me without providing any value in return. Because they have other stuff going on, and sometimes it's not just doing one thing one time. They have to talk to multiple people, fill out questionnaires, submit everything. So it's a lot of work, and you need to help them as best you can. So in that email that we talked about a second ago, make sure you include those submission instructions, deadlines, contact information, resume and qualifications as well. But perhaps most notably, if you're going to ask someone to write a letter for you, then write them a draft. It's not presumptuous. You're showing, again, you're making that gesture that you respect their time and you appreciate what they're doing for you. So you make a boastful letter, and best case scenario, they end up using it, which works great in your favor. And worst case scenario, it still works for you because they don't use it, they write their own, and they still see that you've made that gesture. And lastly, once someone has acted as a reference for you, then you need to maintain that relationship going forward if you want to not only show them that they're appreciated, but also if you want them to be able to recommend you multiple times in the future, which you might find that you do very well need. And one thing you really want to avoid is only reaching out to somebody when you need something from them, when you need them to recommend you. Because in that case, then they will see that you only value the relationship to that extent and you don't actually care about them or the relationship or the contributions that you so supposedly made because you were a great scholar, academic, or employee or something. So what I stick to is a good rule of thumb of just email or phone call once a year. That's really all you have to do. Keep them updated, let them know what you're doing and what your plans for the future are, and ask them if you can do anything for them, and just keep that kind of keep that going as much as you can. And then when the time comes for you to possibly have to ask for another reference, then it makes sense. It's not out of the ordinary, and they're going to be much more willing to do that for you. So in summary, if you want good references that are going to last for a long time, don't shortchange yourself by just going up to somebody out of the blue and being like, hey, will you recommend me? Instead, follow these best practices, establish that relationship and maintain it going forward, reduce the confrontation and reduce that burden. And this is how you're going to eventually come to build a professional network for yourself that's going to help you in many different ways. So, hope this helps. Try it out. Let me know how it works for you, and I'll see you in the next video.